It is a very special pleasure to be here this morning at this 22nd annual conference of the African Securities Exchanges Association, ASEA. I join all of those who have spoken before me in welcoming all of you, especially those who have come from various countries in Africa and outside of Africa. It's evident that the African Securities Exchange Association has a key role in our continental quest for economic growth and development. This is not only because of the vital role that capital markets play in our domestic economies, but because the association reflects the right spirit of collaboration and partnership that is required of African countries and their economic institutions to bring about a more vibrant, more dynamic continental economy. The theme of this year's conference, Champions on the Rise, Africa's Ascension to a More Sustainable Future, is at once uplifting and thought-provoking. It is inspirational because it recognizes that Africa, through its talents, its businesses and commerce, is on the rise. Africa, as we all know, is the last frontier for virgin economic opportunities. And given the recent positive developments on the continent, it's only a question of time before the abundant opportunities on the continent bring about major socio-economic changes. At the same time, our theme reminds us that the path of development which worked for many of the advanced countries and leading emerging economies, especially their indulgence in environmentally damaging industrial practices, may no longer be sustainable. And this means that the past pathways to growth and prosperity may no longer be easy to replicate. In other words, Africa's rise is to some extent going to be determined by an unbeaten path. And there lies the high, significant challenges, but also the great opportunities that we face today. Much has been said already since the turn of the millennium about the relatively high growth rates in Africa, such that amongst us, we're already seeing so much optimism about the continent and the potential pull for global growth. The global economic and financial crisis and the end of the commodity boom seem to have tempered that exuberance somewhat. But there's still a lot to be said about Africa's positive trajectory. Several African countries, including those that are not rich in natural resources, continue to do very well. And we also have a transformed outlook to democracy, to accountability, and anti-corruption on the continent. Not quite 2 decades ago, the words accountability, anti-corruption, democracy almost seemed like bad words. But now there's hardly any African country today where elections are not considered commonplace. And this year, the African Union has been declared the African Union's year of anti-corruption, with our president, President Muhammadu Buhari, as its champion. All of us in African governments, in private firms, in market institutions, must be the champions on the rise. And we have a duty and responsibility to assure a sustainable future on this beautiful continent. We in the federal government of Nigeria realize this, and we know that what is required is the rigorous and unglamorous business of keeping to the vision of our economic recovery and growth plan, fiscal prudence and discipline, and ensuring rigorous governance in the public finance space. We are accordingly committed to ensuring macroeconomic stability in an inclusive economy with a diversified production base. We also realize, of course, that a conducive and supportive environment is essential for businesses to thrive and to have accordingly, and so we have accordingly invested heavily in infrastructure while working strenuously to make it easier to do business in Nigeria. We also realize the importance of a sustainable future, and we've become one of the first, if not outrightly, the first African government to float a green bond to promote the environmental objectives, of our economic recovery and growth plan. Of course, sustainability is not only about repairing the environment, but also about ensuring that our rising populations can be clothed, can be fed and housed without further depleting or damaging the finite stock of global resources. Now, this will require using resources more efficiently and effectively. It also means that we have to avoid the tragedy of the commons and also tackle inequality of opportunity and outcomes. Our social investment programs in school feeding, in job creation, and economic empowerment through interest-free microcredit loans will certainly promote social inclusion and help ensure the peace and security so vital for long-term investment and economic sustainability. African companies, especially those listed on our exchanges and those who make up this association, must also be champions on the rise. They must keep faith with the continent, not only for patriotic reasons, but also because they understand better than foreign firms that there are indeed great rewards for staying the course. They not only understand local conditions, but they are also well placed to navigate through seeming complex local practices. Happily, the African companies that invest in the continent are expanding quite rapidly, and the amount of intra-African foreign direct investment almost tripled in the decades till 2016. These companies must also innovate. They must innovate in response to the new ideas and take advantage of the unique features of the African economy. We must build on the great advances in fintech, like M-Pesa in Kenya, Paystack, Flutterwave, and Eyo in Nigeria. Worthy of mention also are the insightful mini packets for drinks, soap, milk, medicines, sugar, and such like, as we find in the retail sector in many African countries. The emergence of national and corporate champions in Africa will also depend a great deal on the activities of stock markets and other exchanges. This is because of their key role in capital formation and intermediation between various actors in capital markets, including governments, firms, and individuals. In addition, African Securities Exchanges have a vital role to play in promoting best practices in corporate governance to ensure the highest standards of transparency and accountability. Very many of our countries suffer a foreign exchange gap in terms of paying for vital imports, including raw materials and intermediate goods. But by providing an avenue for portfolio investments, capital markets have helped to provide much required liquidity. Of course, we realize that such inflows can be quite volatile and that we must prepare for sudden reversals to avoid disorder and potential crisis. Another key role that African capital markets must play in this era is to assist technology startups to find the resources they need to promote and grow their businesses. We in Nigeria have an advisory group on technology and creativity, and one of the dominant themes in our discussions with the young entrepreneurs in these sectors is the lack of affordable and patient capital. We're accordingly working with the ADB to establish a $500 million innovation fund that will support activities in this sector. Given the size of our economy and the potential of technology and the creative sectors, I'm hopeful that capital market operators will work towards innovative financing solutions to lend further support to these two sectors. Partnerships, of course, will be essential to ensure that African champions continue to rise in a sustainable manner. Such partnerships must be between governments, private firms, and business associations. And this is something that we must pay a great deal of attention to, and we have been doing so in Nigeria. And over the years, our capital markets have been used for listing of federal government instruments, as well as for initial public offerings of privatized firms. Beyond transactions, our collaborations with existing and potential African champions takes place through our National Industrial Policy and Competitiveness Advisory Council, which has several founders of African multinationals in its membership. In addition, we have a presidential quarterly business forum where we brief and interact with leaders of business associations on an ongoing basis. We've held 9 of such forums so far in the past 2.5 years. We've also been promoting the spirit of partnership in the financial sector in order to promote financial inclusion. In this regard, the Central Bank of Nigeria will soon be issuing licenses for payment service banks, which will increase access to financial services to low-income earners and the unbanked. As experience elsewhere has shown, greater financial inclusion is only a short leap away from the increased engagement in other financial activities, including microinsurance, microloans, and indeed participation in stock markets, be it just unit trusts. Before I conclude my remarks, permit me to congratulate the African Securities Exchanges Association for staying the course for so long, this being the 22nd annual conference. The items on your agenda this time are far from commonplace, and I'm confident that your deliberations here will promote further understanding of how the issues of green growth, cloud banking, and fintech will impact on African economies. Moreover, our countries will also benefit from the insights of your members on innovative financing for micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as for affordable housing. We must also salute our host, Mr. Oscar Onyama, the Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and his team for the completion of a very productive tenure as the President of the African Securities Exchanges Association. Congratulations. And let me also congratulate Mr. Karim Haji, the new President of ASEAN, and other members of the incoming team. Our very best wishes for an outstandingly successful tenure. So while wishing the entire conference fruitful deliberations, may I also invite you, especially our foreign guests, to sample the sights and sounds and the culinary delights of our dynamic and vibrant city of Lagos before you leave Nigeria. It is now my very special pleasure and privilege to declare formally open the 2018 African Securities Exchanges Association Conference. Thank you very much.